Hey gang, I'm Joe Edelman and welcome to The Last Frame Live. For those of you that were a little confused about the start time because of what I posted on Facebook, my apologies, 6 o'clock, sorry. Tonight, we're going to talk about do different, be different. And of course, as always, I've got a few quick updates, some photo news for you, and I promise to do a Q&A before we wrap up. And that's really where I want to put my focus tonight. This is going to be a fairly short and quick lesson. So please, start typing. I'll do my best to answer all your questions before we wrap up. If you're watching live, you know the drill. Please leave me a little note in the chat. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're watching from. Already, I saw Lynn sneak in here in the last minute from New York. Who else do I got here? I got Danny in New York, April in Missouri, Ron is here in Oklahoma, Neil from Florida, Mr. John Bibbins in Harrisburg. We got Bob out in Los Angeles, Marquis in North Carolina, David in San Diego, ARRC 917. I think that's Alyssa in New Jersey. Jerry James, how are you, man? It's been a long time. Mirrorless minutes for you mirrorless shooters. I hope you're watching him. And Jamie McDonald, got to check them out. Got Michael in Atlanta. Wow, we got like a big USA show tonight here going on, okay? Maybe we'll get some of our people coming in from Thursday in Australia soon. But listen, if you're watching the replay, no worries. Drop me a comment below the video down there, right? Let me know that you were here. Let me know you watched. All of you, you're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. And for that, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. It would help a lot more people find out about The Last Frame if you could do me a solid. Go ahead and hit that share button down below the video. Share it out to your photography friends, right? Also, while you're doing it down there, hit that thumbs up. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube will recommend the show to other photographers, okay? For those of you that are, is the audio hot, gang? It's hot. All right, not sure why. Oh, I know why. My goodness. So here, guys, I'm going to pause for a quick second, and let's fix this. I had an issue today. Yeah, issues. All right. I had an issue today with a piece of software not working with the new Mac M1 processor. For those of you who are Mac users, you know all about that and you know what's going on. Literally 2 minutes before I came on, I had to reinstall a piece of software, and of course it changed all of my settings and preferences on my audio. So Ken, if you can give me a quick heads up, I think I'm back in the ballpark there. Jeffrey, thanks for that. Okay, my apologies, gang. Literally, this threw me for a loop at the last minute because I updated one piece of software, that threw off another one, and all right, I'm done with my excuses. All right, so moving on. Tonight's announcements. I've been talking about this like every week for the last couple of weeks. We still got a couple more weeks that I'm going to talk about it, right? But I'm going to be presenting at ClickCon in June in Chicago, right? I've got a 50% off discount code that you can go ahead and use. Here's both the link and the discount code so that you guys can take advantage of that. Seriously, if you are anywhere near Chicago or had the ability to be in Chicago, it's June 21 through the 23rd. Check out this event. Awesome event, hands-on education, right? So definitely worth looking into. For our photo news this week, we're going to build a little bit of the photo news conversation into the discussion that we're going to have. I'm sure a lot of you heard, Sony came out with a new lens today, and, there's an amazing amount of videos already about this new lens, yada, yada. Who really cares, right? But I want to dig into this conversation that is called Do Different, Be Different. And gang, look, this is going to be my rallying cry for a while. And this is actually going to be a several-part series. I'm going to give it to you in small doses, right? So tonight, as we jump in, and I hope you'll bear with me, and I hope you'll really give this some serious thought, because this topic tonight, if it's going to be of any value to you, you're going to have to put a little bit of effort and thinking into this, right? Every human being, all of us, is different. No two people are exactly alike in appearance, or personality. But then why do most of us, all of us at some point, work so hard to fit in? Think about that. Now, of course, there's a whole lot of social and clinical psychology that could apply here, but don't worry, I want to narrow the focus of this discussion to photographers. So many photographers follow the rules. They chase trends and they copy what they see in a YouTube video or social media. Yet, most of these very same photographers will admit, so yeah, I'm talking about a lot of you. And trust me, I've been there too. But these same photographers will admit that they want their work to stand out. They want to be noticed or at least acknowledged for being good, or better yet, great. There are so many photographers that settle, and I should say so many reasons that photographers will settle for just following the crowd and applying all the rules and then ultimately being frustrated every time they look at their final images, or worse yet, compare them to what they see on their Instagram or their Flickr feeds. Am I starting to describe some of you in your situation? Look, here's the thing. Every one of you that is watching this video or listening to this video is capable of creating good images. I'm not trying to be nice. I'm keeping it real. You are capable. The overwhelming majority of you who are watching this video or listening are capable of creating amazing images, not just good, but amazing images. In fact, I'm talking about images that far surpass anything that I have ever made. I'm serious. That's not a modesty thing. That's dead serious. And I'll explain the very simple reason for that at the end. Many of you, though, will never meet that potential because you choose instead to fit in. Maybe it's the fear of failure, possibly the fear of being judged negatively. Anxieties that are caused by these fears are a bitch, and they can be debilitating for some people. Maybe you won't meet that potential because you're lazy. Lazy because you just don't want to put in the effort to actually learn your craft. Or maybe you're lazy because you're just not as into photography as you thought you were. Think about it. So I'm going to make a few assumptions as I continue tonight. Number one, I'm going to assume that you want to improve your work. Number two, I will assume that you are willing to put in the effort. And number three, I expect that you would at least like to be acknowledged for making nice pictures or want people to admire your work and maybe consider you an excellent photographer. So look, being different is scary. People are jerks. Okay, well, that's not entirely fair, but hey, look, even the best people can be jerks on their worst days. That's better. We live in a world that is experiencing constant change. You know, on top of all the terrifying things like wars and poverty and racism and climate change and politicians, we have to deal with people's opinions about ourselves and what we do. And the fact that so many people feel compelled to share their opinions while they're staring at a computer screen or a smartphone. Now, frequently those opinions are judgments, which are usually left unsaid in person, but thanks to the shield that is a computer screen, people are much more willing to judge publicly. So here's the thing, choosing to be different, it makes you vulnerable. It opens you up to judgment from others because you have taken a different path. Many people view being different as desperate and cheap, kind of an attempt at gaining attention. It's kind of like a guy that would wear a bright red shirt on camera. But let's keep it real. Isn't attention what we all secretly desire? We want people to pay attention to our work, but in a positive way, without the negativity that is so prevalent in today's world. Now, indeed, being different and doing things differently, it's a risk. But I got to tell you, the rewards are tremendous. You see, being different, it gets people's attention and it creates interest in you and your work. As a photographer, you're going to accomplish this in two different ways. The first is with your work, your photographs. Instead of following trends, you will create your own. If the crowd goes left, you'll go right. Period. People tend to be jealous of the person who is willing to march to the beat of their own drum. Because while that person is creating uniquely, the other people, they're scrambling to fit in and ultimately be average. Now, the other thing that we have to do here is accept the fact that it's time to let go of the how many metric. How many followers do I have? How many likes did I get? And how many subscribers or views did that video generate? Honestly, who cares? Does it really matter how many awards or ribbons you have won? Is any of that what got you excited about photography? While other people are scrambling to fit in and adhere to that how many metric, those of us who are unique and different, we are learning through experience. We're learning how to leverage our own uniqueness to improve and stand out. This process, it built a stronger sense of self. It creates curiosity. Curiosity is awesome because people become curious about you and your work. Now, to be fair, they may be interested in a good way, possibly in a bad way. But once you're comfortable being different, it won't matter. I love my red shirt. Being different builds confidence. Embracing different will build your self-esteem and your sense of worth and your value as a photographer. Make your own rules. Live by them. Create your own value set. For what it's worth, studies have shown, I have to throw some science into the conversation, right? Studies have shown that people with higher self-esteem are more likely to be happy and successful in life. Seriously. It's also worth noting that studies have shown, in fact, I heard this on the Today Show this morning. Studies have shown that kids who break the rules and color outside the lines tend to grow up more successful and earn more money than those kids who aim to please and follow every rule to the letter. Oh, Cloud Strife. I have to interrupt this really quickly. Cloud Strife, I'm going to come back, so get yourself ready and put on your big boy panties. Your statement, I'm trying to learn all the rules and I can break them. You and I are going to have a long talk about that because after tonight, you will never repeat those words. Please never repeat those words. We'll come back to it, okay? I'm really happy that a lot of you have so many opinions. I'd love it if we could have a discussion at the end. Maybe you want to kind of listen to what I have to say here, right? So anyway, being different, it's uniquely creative and it breeds more creativity when you embrace it as a value set and a lifestyle. It actually takes effort to be different and to do different. So this requires a little bit of determination. The more you lean into your unique style and your approach to photography, or for that matter, business, by refusing to adhere to rules and follow trends, I promise you your creative abilities will develop faster. Go ahead and read the biographies of successful people, and it doesn't matter the category. So I'm not talking about just photographers. It could be business people, athletes, anybody who was highly successful. The more you read, you'll hear the same themes repeated over and over. These people thought differently. These people felt differently. They saw the world differently. They figured out early in life that they didn't want to conform, so they followed their own path by creating their own path. Fitting in, honestly, fitting in requires just as much energy as it takes to be unique. So why would you waste your energy, your time, and your life trying to live up to someone else's standards? Life is too short. Maybe it's because I'm at a point in life where I have less time ahead of me than I do behind me that I'm acutely aware of this. But I promise you, every day you waste is a day that you can't get back. Every time I've worked to fit in throughout my life and my career, I accomplished my goal, only to find myself feeling exhausted and empty. Another great benefit, being different, eliminates competition. I get so tired of photographers whining about how hard it is today because so many people are photographers and it's so hard to be able to make money as a photographer. You don't have competition unless you're trying to fit in. If you're trying to be you, be different, do different, only you can do you. If you try to be somebody else, at best, you will be a lesser copy. We all know that a copy is never as good as an original, and you totally understand that comparison if you have ever washed your hands after handling a Xerox, right? Look, if you are of a competitive mindset, I am, that's great, but compete only against yourself to improve your work and then to take your creativity to new levels. You are the only person that you have to compete against. That's it. By doing that one simple thing, your work is instantly beyond compare. And I got to tell you, and look, to be fair, this is not something I figured out when I was 20 years old. It took me a bunch of years to work through this and realize this. I ignored this advice foolishly, okay? But here's the thing. The more that you do it, the more stress you relieve, the easier it becomes. It builds confidence. And you know what? From a business perspective, it becomes a lot easier to ignore the how many metric and focus on the people who appreciate your photography and see value in what you do. They're the people that will support your work and pay you money. Okay? Many of the most successful photographers today, working photographers, so we're not talking YouTuber bullcrap here, working photographers. So I'm not even talking me. Working photographers have very minimal social media profiles. Successful, meaning they're busy, they're making the big bucks, taking pictures, not teaching, not making YouTube videos, none of that crap. Okay? Their social profiles are small. They focus their efforts on the work and the experience that they create for clients. They have competed against themselves to improve what they do. But at the end of the day, they do what they do, not what the crowd is doing. And because of that, their clients will pay a premium. Now, to be fair, I want to cover both sides of this equation, right? I know that some of you are all about the gear, and I am not making a judgment here now. It's no different than, for some people, They're into their cars and their engines and their horsepower. You know, I'm one of those people. It's like if the car drives and gets me from point A to point B and it's a nice color, I'm really happy, right? So I understand some of you are about the gear and that's okay. But please don't kid yourself. You're not going to improve your photography by chasing gear. And this applies to all of you. It's okay to be all about the gear as long as you are okay with not growing creatively. But honestly, even if you're into the gear, even if that's part of your photography mentality, I just really don't understand why you're here listening to me. Because I would argue you're wasting your time. I mean, I'll give you an example. Just go ahead and search YouTube for Sony's new 24 to 70 millimeter lens that came out today. Over a dozen videos have been posted in the last 8 hours. I did this math about 10 minutes before I came online. Combined, those videos have over 80,000 views at an average of 12 minutes per video. That's more than 16,000 hours of people watching videos about version 2 of a lens in less than 1 day. Why? What's the benefit? So here's my insight for those of you who are dedicated to being unique and improving your craft, and not worrying so much about the gear. And that is that a lot of people with cameras, you know, who are not going to be your competition because they would actually much rather spend their time on YouTube trying to see what a dozen YouTubers think about a lens that, by the way, come on, gang, those YouTubers, they got the lens for free. How do you think they had it on the day that it was announced? Those YouTubers didn't pay for the lens. So why would you listen to them anyway? They're simply very willing gear junkies who allow themselves to be puppets for the manufacturers. And they're not going to say the lens is bad because they won't get free gear if they do. I digress. I think you get my point. We're not done with this conversation. As I hinted early on, next week, I'm going to talk about where do the ideas come from. That's the title, you know in advance for next week, and that's the topic. I know that some of you feel like what I've said tonight has some merit, but you don't know where to begin. You don't know how to implement the do different, be different philosophy. And you're right. I haven't talked about that. I've talked about the concept, right? So next week, we are going to go ahead and break it down. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide of how to get started to adapt, be different, do different, make it a working philosophy, and improve your work, make your work stand out, and grow. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, I promised that I would explain to you how you have the opportunity to be so much better than me. And this is a challenge. This is a challenge to just about every one of you. There's going to be a couple of you that don't meet this criteria, but I mean literally only a couple. I purchased my first camera with my own savings in 1971. That means that I will have been taking pictures for 51 years as of this June. Every time I pick up a camera, I'm fighting the been there, done that to be creative. There are very few things or genres that I haven't at least dabbled with in my life. So the task of coming up with something new is much more work. You know I'm very committed to that challenge, but it's hard work all the same. Most of you who are listening to me and watching this video afterwards haven't been shooting for 51 years. So regardless of how many years you have left to shoot, you are growing your skill set with better technology and way better and more abundant learning resources than I had available in the 1970s and 1980s. So if you use those resources properly and you put in the hard work, there's no reason that you can't easily surpass my skill set and my accomplishments. So next week, we'll get started on the path. Hopefully you'll be back, and hopefully you'll want to make the commitment to do different and be different. And let's start creating creating boring photography. Okay? All right, gang. So there's an awful lot of conversation going on. So we'll check through here. I got to go back and I got to talk about CloudStrike's comment. I'm going to try not to be too tough on this one. But if you have questions, let's go ahead and type them in here and let's get started on the questions. So there was a comment that popped in really early on. And CloudStrike, look, I love you. So you just happened to kind of walk into a pet peeve of mine. So, I'm just going to be honest. I got to put this out here. And this is something that actually, these words that I'm about to tell you, they came out of my mouth last night in the middle of a presentation that I was doing for a camera club. And they frequently come out of my mouth when I'm presenting for camera clubs, because as you guys know, I frequently talk about the idea of not following rules, breaking the rules, being different. The do different, be different conversation is kind of a new way of framing it. But a lot of this I've been talking about for years. And it drives me absolutely insane when I hear that line, learn the rules to break the rules. And I know that many of us who are here watching this or listening to this have heard that line from someone who mentored us or someone who was ahead of us in our photography path. You have no idea how many times I've heard that line in my career. As I got older and wiser, and as my wife started to educate me about cognitive psychology and how our brains work and how we learn, I realized that concept, learn the rules to break the rules, is pretty much the biggest bullshit that anybody has ever shoveled. Literally. Simple reason. Super, super simple reason. Once you know the rules, you are fighting to get out of the box. Makes it harder. Makes it more challenging. Humans by nature, I'm not insulting any of you, are innately lazy. We strive to make things easier, simpler, faster, lighter, all of it. We don't want to have to work so hard. So while you're fighting to get out of that box, you're trying to overcome your own desires to not have to work so hard. You're making it harder. Once you know the rules, everything you do, you are fighting to ignore the rules. So don't tell new photographers, please don't tell young photographers to learn the rules to break the rules, because all you're doing, gang, is you're basically making it 10 times more difficult for them to succeed. And especially when we compare younger generations of photographers today to especially my generation or the generation right behind me, they don't want that pressure. They don't want to be told how they have to do things. You've heard me say many times, today's younger generation, they're the smart ones. All this baby boomer calling them snowflake crap and all that stuff, man, it just shows you how freaking out of touch baby boomers are. Makes me ashamed. They're the smart ones. Think about your own experiences, because I can back this up with a concept that you'll completely understand and you can't argue. Think about your own experiences through life and it doesn't have to be with photography, just the concept of creativity. The things that stopped you, that grabbed your attention and made you think to yourself, wow, that's really cool. 99.9% of the time, that was really cool because you had never seen anything like it before. because whoever generated that was able to say, screw the rules, get outside the box and do something in a completely different and unique way. Do your history on where the rules came from. The rules came from artists who sucked. They weren't as good as the masters. They were jealous. So they did something that had some logic to it. They essentially used statistics. They studied what the masters do, studied it hard. And they were able to correlate, okay, well, if Rembrandt was doing window lighting, he would generally have the shadows here and the subject would be here in relationship to the window. And if Renoir was painting this, he would use this kind of a brushstroke, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That allowed them to create copies, early Xeroxes of paintings. They weren't as good, and they couldn't be as good because those artists weren't as good. They were just copying what the masters had done. And then over time, it literally became testosterone and bullying. Taking younger artists and saying, well, no, it has to be this way because this is the right way to do it, because that's how it gets done, because so-and-so did that. And it becomes a rule. Why is that a rule? How does a rule make anything creative? You can't put rule and creative in the same sentence. It doesn't work. They contradict each other. So all of you that are saying that, number one, are not understanding the English language. You're just repeating some trivial, meaningless crap that somebody dumped on you. So Cloud Strife, you're not the only one who's at fault for that line. And, you know, you won't be the last person to use it because it's going to be around for quite some time. But honestly, it's literally a way for older, insecure, lazy-ass photographers to put new, younger photographers in a box so that they don't have to feel threatened by the fact that these newer, younger photographers still have the luxury of seeing the world in a way that is brand new to them, that is exciting, that is different. And that is an amazing lens to be creative through. So that's my take on that. All right, scrolling back here. Let's see. I know it's mostly comments. I haven't seen too many questions. Carmen had a question here actually about the Mac M1s. Just to be clear, I love the Mac M1, but you know, like any new technology, you know, there's going to be some issues along the way. Carmen said, I'm thinking of getting an iMac M1 with mid-range model, 8 gig of RAM in place of 16, as it seems at double the 8 core fans. Okay, so no, Carmen, don't buy one for that reason. RAM is still the gold standard. Look, these super processors that the M1s have are nice, but for me, what sold me on going with the M1 is the fact that I could take a laptop, because, you know, as you guys know, as I've shown before, I run everything now off of an M1 MacBook Pro. It's the M1 Max. It's the bigger processor. I got rid of my iMac. I don't run a desktop computer. That way, this computer goes with me everywhere. I can do whatever I need to do anywhere, anytime, and I'm on the same computer. I'm not like swapping back and forth. It's still the RAM that's going to make a difference. I wouldn't, you know, I definitely wouldn't be able to do video work with 16 gig of RAM, not efficiently. And even Photoshop work with the compositing and everything that I do, my Photoshop files can get quite large. And I want that RAM, because the RAM is where you're moving information around and being able to get things out of the way so the computer can think about something new and then finish processing something it's doing. The processors are how fast it can do those things, but you need the RAM for the processors to be able to really do their thing. So yes, is an 8 gig of RAM M1 a boat ton faster than the old Intel processors? Yes, but 8 gig of RAM for a photographer is still not a lot of RAM, right? So that's my take there. I would disagree about the whole bit about, you know, when you're running Infinity, the cores are more important. No, the RAM's more important when you're working with photographs. Okay. So let's see here. Just scrolling down. And do we have any other actual questions? Does anybody have any questions here? I'm still reading. I'm sorry, guys. You had a whole lot of opinions going on during this tonight. So let's see. So Jeffrey, this is an interesting statement, and I wanted to touch base on this here. Let me put it up on the screen. Whoops, that's not it. So I apologize. That's not the one. This is the one. Jeffrey said here, maybe I'm comfortable being different in my own style, but the clients may have their own fit-in needs that I want to be sensitive to when I try and take them in the direction. Trust is beautiful. So, Jeffrey, I think I understand where you're headed with that, but here's the thing. That can also become an issue. As long as you are framing that statement within the guise of, if a client comes to me and is asking me to do something that I don't normally do, or asking me to photograph something in a style that is different than the way that I would normally do it, then they're not my client. I don't take the job because I'm ultimately going to fail them. I could do an amazing piece of work, but I'm ultimately going to fail them. I will help them find a photographer who shoots in the style that they shoot and does exactly what they need. If you're simply talking about the idea that, yes, if somebody says, hey, I want a portrait, and I need to know, okay, is that portrait for social media? Is that portrait for LinkedIn? Is that portrait for on the wall? Is it for a job? Then yes, that's going to impact all of the choices that I will make to do that shot. So in that sense, I completely agree. But in the sense of, hey, I'm going to change my style to fit what the client needs, that's a horrible idea. That will burn you. You will get burnt if you make that a practice, because you're going to get comfortable doing it. And then eventually a client's going to take you a little bit too far and you're going to fail. I don't believe ever in setting myself up to fail with a client. Not every client is a client. You have to turn people down, period. That's part of running a business, okay? And let's see. Travis had a comment here. Well, Travis, actually, I appreciate the compliment, but I want to talk about the first part. Where is it here? Too much of today's photography looks like it could have been taken by the same photographer. Yeah, you're right. And to be fair, Travis, and this I think actually is, to be fair to everyone who's kind of on the bad end of tonight's conversation, right? The people that try to fit in, whether they are aware of it or whether they really want to do it, but they just don't know how to not do it. Here's the thing. Even back in the 70s and 80s when I started, while we didn't have social media, we had photography magazines, right? There were, Popular Photography and Modern Photography. And then in the 80s along came American Photographer magazine. And there were a couple others, and in different places of the world, there were others. There were plenty of photographers back then who tried to replicate what they saw in the magazines. And, if you were shooting color, you might be trying to copy photographers like Peter Maisel. And then, when you got into the 80s and 90s, you might be trying to, copy the styles of oh, gosh, I just lost his name at this point. I'm sorry. I will admit, when I first got into fashion, I tried to copy the styles of very famous, now deceased Italian photographer, Francesco Scavullo, because he had shot more Cosmopolitan covers than any other photographer to that time. In fact, I think he still holds that record historically. But that was also kind of the time period in my life where I was realizing, like, I can't do what he does. Like, I'm not capable of that. And, that's when I had some mentors that kind of pushed me in that direction of, look, you're not going to copy him. He is, number one, his work is iconic. You're going to have to, kind of create your own path and find your own style. So, yeah, we do see a ton of work, and it's because, unfortunately, we have a lot of lazy photographers, and we have a lot of photographers that, in their defense, it's not so much that they're lazy, it's that they don't know how to get beyond that. So that's really kind of what I'm hoping to give people, one, a little bit of a kick in the butt, but also to start to give people a framework next week of, how you can kind of step by step. Because it's easy to say, hey, be creative, do your own thing. There's no action steps there, right? And a lot of people, you know, I'm not judging anyone. A lot of people need some action steps to help them get started and to be able to make that difference. So that's really what I, you know, I want to kind of try and lead this into in that regard. Okay. So, and scrolling on down here, spinning wheels photography, rules, a 4-letter word. It certainly is. It's definitely one of my mottos. Jerry James, how are you liking the Sony gear? It's a great question. I'm not going to lie to you. Right now, Jerry, you know, as of today, which is what, Wednesday, April 27th, 2022, I hate cameras. I know everybody's gasping. Relax, calm down, have a seat. Let me explain. I'm frustrated. I have this love-hate relationship with Sony. Like, I love to hate it. The A7R4A, which is what I'm shooting with, it is a sweet camera. Number one, it's fractionally bigger than the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark III. I don't have an OM1 camera yet, gang, so I'll get to that in a minute. But it's only fractionally bigger. It actually weighs like the same or just a smidge less, okay? I wanted to get that camera to, you know, be able to shoot some stuff at the other extreme, 61 megapixels, and, you know, kind of be able to do the comparisons, right? So I love the bigger, you know, the bigger files. Now keep in mind, gang, by the way, you didn't hear me say, oh, the bigger files are better. So please get your information straight, gang, if you're gonna quote me, right? I love the bigger files because they make retouching a little easier, right? Mainly because I'm like a freak about details in retouching. You know, obviously with the bigger files, it's more hard drive space. I need this, you know, super computer, you know, M1 Mac with the Mac's chip and all that stuff to be able to handle that, but it handles it just fine. I'm really ticked at Olympus because the OM1, which I have not even handled yet. So I'm speaking from everything I've read and everything I've seen and from people that I've talked to that I trust. Okay, no videos. I literally have not watched a single video on that camera because you guys know I refuse to do that. But I'm ticked at Olympus because while it was really exciting the day they announced it, and it's like, oh, they made all these improvements. And from what I can see, the improvements are great. But then, you know, Panasonic comes out like, what, a week later, 2 weeks later, and manages to push the megapixels up. And I will admit, I would be thrilled to have everything that the OM1 does in 24 megapixels. And instead, you know, it's a 22.9 megapixel sensor that gives you an effective 20 point something, okay? So it's kind of like, you know, honestly, I guess if I could kind of define my perfect camera now, for me, I'd like it to be similar to what my Nikon D810 was in megapixels, like right around, what was that, 33 megapixels? I would love to have an Olympus size and shaped camera that was right in that, you know, range. I have been kind of reading a lot about the Sony, what is it, the A7 III, I think? Because Sony's got so many damn bodies, I can't keep track of them all. But I think it's the A7 III. So I want to try and get my hands on one of those and play around with it. You know, I'm not, right now, at the end of the day, I'm not married. I'm not married to Sony and I'm not married to Olympus. I don't see myself getting rid of the Olympus cameras for literally one reason. And that reason straight up is because of my grandkids. Because I have the Olympus 100 to 400, not the monster lens, the less expensive one, the variable aperture one. I have the Olympus 300 millimeter lens. So for shooting my grandkids playing sports, you know, that gives me up to 800 millimeter focal length, right? Which is like awesome. And I don't want to give that up because it's cool. I go out and I photograph, you know, my grandson playing baseball and I make all the kids on his team look like major league ball players because I go out, I wear knee pads. So I'm like shooting really low and it's awesome. You know, I got blurry backgrounds because Little League fields are not that exciting to look at. It's cool. So I'm not going to give them up. I don't see that happening. But in terms of, do I have a camera right now that I am like in love with and it's like perfect? No, I'm really frustrated with cameras right now. So yeah, that was a long answer, but that's kind of where I'm at. I just wish Olympus would go just a little bit higher in the megapixel count. I'm still totally fine with micro four thirds. Like, so this is not a, hey, I want a full frame sensor thing. I'm totally fine with micro four thirds. I love the fact that the files are, much more efficient, all that kind of stuff. But I wish they would have given it just a bit more. So we'll see. Let's see, where are we at here? Cody, am I writing a book? It's in the works. Takes a while, but it's in the works, yes. Alvin, how do you try to be different when just about everything has been done in almost the same style? Like, there are only so many stories or types of movies just repeated over and over again. But see, Alvin, that's unfortunately, I gotta be honest, that's a very pessimistic outlook. I'll be the first to say I agree with you about the movie thing. Like, how many damn sequels do we have to have? How many versions of Batman do we have to do, right? Like, really? Come on, okay? And I just heard this morning on the Today Show, they're gonna do another Batman with Robert Pattinson and all that stuff. And I haven't even seen the first one yet. But here's the point. There is a different reason why all the movies are the same. And it's got nothing to do with creativity, honestly. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but it's got to do with money. It's simply money and financing. That's why there's no creativity in Hollywood, okay? The fact of the matter is there are a lot of people out there doing some really creative stuff, but they're not going to get the financing to be able to make big movies and to be seen. So, that's what makes it's very tough to make that happen, okay? So that's the Hollywood thing. On the photography thing, the idea that it's all been done, no, it hasn't. Dude, I'm 62 years old and I still come up with stuff that you people look at. It's like, oh my God, like I've never seen anything like that. Who would have thought of using a television for a portrait background? So it hasn't all been done. The difference between me and you is I am committed, dedicated, driven to not do the same old shit. That's it. So I fight and I experiment and I fail and I do a lot of stuff that I suck at because I can learn from it. And that gets me closer to another idea, a better idea that works. That's how you do it. And I'm going to get into steps next week. Next week, I'm going to break down for you guys literally how I get all my ideas. And it's not drugs, honest. Okay? So I'm going to break it down. I'll give you the whole breakdown. I'll show you my whole process. Okay? But I promise you it hasn't all been done before. Not at all. Flip side, Alvin, let me throw you a bone here. We could argue, and now I don't like this argument a lot because it's kind of a pessimistic argument, but I think it's a very fair argument. We could argue that there is no such thing as a truly unique idea. But let me explain why. It's nowhere near really, it's not as pessimistic as it sounds. It's just a simple fact that all ideas that we have are influenced by our life experiences, by our surroundings, by the things that we've seen, that have touched, have heard. So even when we have what is perceived as an, oh my God, truly unique idea, there are always going to be like connect the dots to influences, things that basically pushed us in that direction. Okay. So let's see here, scrolling on down. Ken had a comment up here, a question. Oh, there it is. When you say do your own thing, are there really that many things that haven't been done yet? Okay, maybe I should have read this one before I answered Alvin's. On some level, whatever a photographer does must be influenced by other photographers. No, not influenced by other photographers. It's only influenced by other photographers if you look at too many photographers. I'm not kidding. I had a conversation, I won't name names, but I had a conversation with another photographer who I've never met before, never talked to the man. Some of you may know him. The name doesn't matter. Yesterday afternoon on the phone. And in the course of this conversation, no less than 5 times, and I find this happens with a lot of photographers, no less than 5 times, this guy was name dropping. It's like, yeah, do you know this person? And do you know this person? And do you know this person? And do you know this? I don't. And I know this makes you sound like I'm arrogant or something. No, it's not about being arrogant. Like, I know photographers that I've met, like at trade shows and things like that. You know, I have trade show buddies that at every trade show and every big event, I'm going to spend some time with. People like Will Cadena, Rick Friedman. Yeah, you know, Manny Ortiz, as much as I give him a hard time, if I see him, you know, we're going to say hi. It just is. Miguel Gila, same thing. But they're trade show buddies. Do I follow their work? No. I simply don't. That's not entirely true. I follow Rick's because Rick is a photojournalist, so you guys know, my heart is still there. Last week, one day he photographed President Biden, the next day he photographed a Boston Marathon. Like, that's cool, right? The other guys, I casually see stuff that goes by. Will, I have just wicked respect for because of his business drive. The guy is a machine. Miguel and Manny, I love them both. They're incredibly talented. I wish they'd focus more on education and less entertainment bullshit and gear crap because nobody gives a shit. Well, real photographers don't give a shit. They're not going to develop their skill level to the level that they could if they just keep focusing on the gear. That's a fact. That's not my opinion. So I don't pay attention to other photographers. And, I've said this before, and it's not to be a jerk. Like, I don't care about other photographers' pictures. But if you listen to me all the time, you know why. I keep telling you, remember your why. Remember why you got interested in photography. I talked about that tonight. I got interested in photography because I liked the process, but the camera became my ticket to people. I was a shy kid. That's my interest. It's the people. It's the process. Looking at somebody else's picture, look, I can recognize, oh, it's a good picture, or wow, I admire that, but I didn't get to take it. I wasn't there. I didn't get to meet the person in the picture. So I just don't find that interesting. Like, it doesn't faze me. So I don't look at other photographers' work for the sake of getting inspiration. I think that's the dumbest thing, honestly, that you could do, is looking at another photographer's work to be inspired. Look at how a photographer created something because you like an element and go steal that element to make something different. Oh, hell yes. But not to do what somebody else is doing. So, let's see here. Cherry, I don't think there will ever be a perfect camera. And I completely agree. I mean, it's one of those things. There's not a perfect computer. There's not a perfect camera. There's no one lens that, is ever going to do anything. But I will say throughout my career, there have been cameras that were perfect for the time, meaning I just love them. I think the first camera that I fell in love with a Nikon F because it was my first Nikon. So that doesn't count. But the first Nikon that I truly I felt like I was one with that camera was the Nikon F2 with a motor drive. That camera was just the sweetest thing ever. Loved that camera. And then, getting into the digital realm, I will admit the D800 and the D810 were, I think, I never used the D850. So I know a lot of people say, wait, what about the D850? I never used that because that's when I switched out, right about the time that came out is when I switched out. The D800 and the D810 were amazing cameras. Loved them, but Nikon was taking way too long to go mirrorless. And I understood that mirrorless was something that, well, I understood it was the future, but I understood it was also something that I really wanted. It fits my mindset. I don't want the camera to be in my way. Mirrorless allows me to work faster. It allows me to work with more confidence. It's smaller, it's lighter, all of that. So that was a really big deal. Because even, I'll tell you guys, even with my Olympus cameras, when I switched to Olympus, I bought the grips for them, to have the extra battery in them and to have the vertical button. I don't even use those anymore. Now, even when I'm shooting sports, I have no problem putting my arm up and over. It's like no big deal, right? And it's that much less weight that I'm carrying. The batteries last plenty long. I never have to change batteries in the middle of a game. I've gone to, games where I've got literally half a battery in the camera. And I have a spare with me, but I never had to change the battery during the game. It's like, it's no big deal. So yeah, but I haven't found the one that's just like perfect. So still holding out, you know, we'll see. Let's see. Modern Photographer had where you scrambled the image. Oh, Modern Photography Magazine. Is that what we're talking about, Cooley? Let's see here. Girls take the photographer. All right. So I think, oh, what is this here? April. Sorry, where was that comment? I missed that, April. Let me scroll back and find that here. There it is. I'm often worrying that I may be hurting my own growth by shooting more artistic things for myself and having a separate style for client work. It's still in my style, but different. Well, I don't think, I guess the way that I would maybe process that, April, or what I would encourage you to try is, I don't think you have to have a separate style for client work at all. So, number one, that's hard work. Number two, that separate style is actually impacting your own style. Plus, it also means that when you're shooting your client work, you're not loving it as much. You're not also connecting with it as well. I would encourage you to start to build more of your own style into your client work. And if you're talking about the difference between doing like the fashion portraits, kind of like I do, and then doing regular portraits, if you really prefer doing the fashion portraits, then you need to build out a business around the fashion portraits, and then don't worry as much about doing the regular portraits. Even in the Midwest, it is possible to make really great money providing photography experiences and doing interesting creative work, right? Again, it's never how big is your audience. It's about finding the right people. So certainly you're going to sell that work in an area that's got more disposable income. You're going to sell that work in an area where there are people who, they want to pay for experiences, and you have to build out a full experience around it. So, so I don't know that it has to kind of be, one or the other in that sense. Okay. Let's see, Captain Timber here. Okay, so of course now it's just about time to finish, and a whole bunch of comments come in. That's all right. Let's start out this here. Marcos, hey, can you tell a photographer is a good teacher for the ones that are starting? How can you tell a photographer is a good teacher for the ones that are starting? You find the guy on YouTube that wears the red shirt. Duh. I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for there, Marcos. I will tell you this, and let me give you a better piece of feedback. Number one, great photographer does not equal great educator, period. Not at all, okay? So if your priority is to find a great educator, then it's not necessarily about the quality of their work. It's about their ability and willingness to teach. Most photographers, I'm going to get myself in trouble for this, but I stand by it. Most photographers that teach, all they teach is, I've done this for 20 years and I won this award and I did that and I set my camera up this way and I use this lens and I do this. And they're trying to be helpful by sharing what they do. But they're not teaching with any interest in the student. They're just standing up on a pedestal saying what they do. An educator is going to take their knowledge and their experience and try to connect it. And that's what I do. I have to thank my wife for all of that. My wife is my example that I have learned from. And I'm very proud of the fact I put a lot of effort into learning how to better connect and better teach. But had it not been for my wife, I would have never made that correlation. I would be just like those photographers that just share what they do. So for a newer young photographer, having somebody just tell you what they do is not actually going to help you, because what they're not telling you is they're not telling you why. They're not getting you into the mindset and making you understand that, okay? I didn't have teachers. I've never taken a photography course. Well, that's a slight lie. I did take one course. I promise if you guys remind me next week, I'll tell you a hysterical story, because here's the truth. Ready? So I'll give you the punchline without the story this week. I failed the class. Straight up failed it. But it never went on my report card as a failure. So you'll have to come back next week for the story. But you don't necessarily need a teacher. What you need is essentially a mentor, but a real mentor, a good mentor, not somebody that's going to tell you everything, but somebody that's going to teach you how to think, teach you how to work through things, teach you how to process things, and then fill in the blanks when you're stuck. I like to think of it as an accountability partner. That's what most photographers need today, is an accountability partner. Somebody that's, it's almost like a sponsor at AA. It's like somebody that's going to call them every day. Did you pick up a camera today? Did you shoot today? You said you were going to do this week. Did you do it? Have you made any progress? What are you doing? How come? Why not? That's what most people need today, literally. There are great resources online, but people spend too much time online and they never pick up the camera. That's the challenge, right? All right, gang. So listen, it is 7 o'clock. I appreciate you all being here. I apologize for the really crappy sound in the beginning. I will get this software thing worked out by next week. But please make sure you pick up your cameras. If you are a member of my new photography community, tomorrow night, we're going to have a town meetup again. We do them on Zoom, so we get to talk face-to-face. We get to meet photographers from all over the world, have conversations. We're going to do some image reviews tomorrow night. You can find the link to the community. Join it for free. It's in the link below this video. Hope to see you there. If not, I'll catch you next week for the last frame. Please get out there, pick up your cameras, and shoot. Because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Take care.